thank you both for setting the stage for the next year of discussions. So I think to maximize people's ability to put thoughts and questions on the floor, we'll maybe hear from 4 or 5 people with either a comment or a question, and then I'll ask Nancy and Kim to respond, and then we'll hear from another 4 or 5. Is that okay? Yes, in the back.
Eric Weltman with Food and Water Watch, a nonprofit consumer organization. 3 quick points. First of all, we are extraordinarily proud signatories of the primer, which Nancy referred to, and we do think that would be an extraordinarily powerful vehicle, a great vehicle for all organizations to sign on and have it be an expression of support for food policy reforms in New York City. Second thing is, I also agree with Nancy that we think it would be wise for the food movement to consider some sort of modest proposals that soon-to-be Mayor de Blasio could adopt and have them see a value and a benefit to being a food champion. The third thing, perhaps most importantly, is I want to highlight the campaign against Walmart in New York City. We have successfully kept Walmart out of New York City. I think it's worth noting that, notwithstanding New York City's vast purchases of food, Walmart is the largest consumer of food in this country, being the largest retailer. And they have, as such, an extraordinarily powerful influence over what's produced, how it's produced, where it's sold, and what have you. And I think it would behoove us as a food movement in New York City to recognize the necessity of reforming the larger food industry, which really, as I said, plays a really powerful role, and we would maintain certainly a very negative role in what's available, what kind of food is available to us in our community. So I just want to urge us to continue keeping Walmart out of New York and taking on the larger reforms that we need to really alter and transform our food system.
Thank you. Other? Ken?
I think people can hear.
Yeah,
You'll have
definitely.
the microphone in a second.
Okay, but I'm thinking of sort of starting where Kim ended up with the food metrics report, and wanting to hear from actually all 3 of you, what additional metrics would you want to see in there? What else should we be measuring?
Good. A few more comments, and then we'll give people a chance.
The jobs issue is always so enormously cogent, and the deindustrialization of upstate with its enormous political power is something I think we need to pay attention to a lot more. The Michigan State in Lansing now is using double hoop houses and producing food 11 months a year, and I think we have not adequately used the issue of jobs to move these very important issues forward.
Thank you. A couple more.
Hello, my name's Biko. I'm from the New School for Social Research, and I also work with an organization called Brand Workers. I guess I have a question for the whole panel. I feel sometimes with policy, particularly around food, we see a slippage between language that incorporates economic development and jobs on one hand, but sort of misses out on what could be good jobs, what could be actually good jobs that work for all New Yorkers. So a concrete example of this would be the Food Manufacturers Fund, which provides economic development possibilities for small businesses, up to $1 million of public funds, but has no real labor standards. And I think another example would be the FoodWorks report that came out, which had a lot about jobs and economic development, but very little about ways in which we could actually encourage good jobs, whether they're unions or just living wage. So what can we do to sort of keep transparency in these models moving forward? Thank you.
Great. Kim, you want to start to answer some or all of these questions?
I'm going to answer Jan's question about metrics. So metrics in here really generally means outputs. It's generally about where programs are, how many people are enrolled, that kind of metric, not so much outcomes. And so I think that everybody recognizes that a major goal is really to develop outcomes that that we can look at around our food policy. And the big challenge in that is obviously that these things take a lot of time. So if we look at numbers around obesity and diet-related disease and hunger, we may we may be challenging, because there are so many factors that contribute to them beyond municipal food policy, to hold those up as parameters of success or failure of these strategies. So, but I think that there are different types of tools and metrics that can be tracked over time that can be added to this and can be useful, and some of them will be programmatic, so where there will be additional programs or changes in programs that will, make the report longer. And it doesn't, even though we made it extremely comprehensive, I would say it probably still doesn't address every single thing that's going on in city government around food. We more than doubled the number of metrics that it tracks, but it's still probably not quite capturing everything. So there's just more work to do, and it's something that municipalities, I think in general, are looking at what are appropriate. Municipalities and other entities are thinking about how can we measure progress around food policy, and it is this very challenging thing because there are so many contributing factors around it.
Okay, three of the questions really were related to labor, and I think that it also sort of begs the question of, before you came, we were talking about should we ask for something big? Should we ask for school food change? What would be our best strategy? I think that the food movement would be wise. This isn't about policy so much as it's about alliances, to connect to the the food worker movement. It's very varied. I mean, you go get a big, you can work with like Fast Food Forward, which is supported by SEIU, and they can be wonderful and a little hard to reach, and have to work at it. The anti-Walmart movement, I think it's really, really important to stand up against crappy jobs and retail outlets that harm the entire world. It's not just that they actually had a food drive asking Walmart workers to give canned goods to other Walmart workers who were so poor that they couldn't afford to eat. I mean, it's just the insanity that we have any kind of support for an organization like that. And I also think that it's wrong for any of the food organizations to take any money from Walmart. I feel that it's absolutely a wrong thing to do. But so I think we really do, as a movement, as a food justice movement, need to stand up for living wage, for sick days, for the right to organize, for good jobs in the food system, all of that. Don't want to have just jobs. We want to have good jobs, and I think it's really important. Mark's point about deindustrialization, people should check out Milk Not Jails. I love them. They're quite wonderful. Their idea is, with all this really important work that's been done by people like Michelle Alexander and others on the new Jim Crow, on this huge incarceration, particularly of men of color, that we've seen that the white working class men upstate now have jobs as corrections officers and prison guards. And if we could move toward more agricultural work and get some of those workers to have agricultural jobs, and it's a sort of pie in the sky idea, but I think it's an important idea to say, well, what's happened to where is our economy going? Why are we letting it go in this direction? That we could engage more people to want to be producing food and not be looking to incarcerate more men of color in the cities to feed their jobs upstate. In terms of...
Do this fast so we can get some more people talking.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
That's it.
Just a few quick comments on metrics and jobs. First, Kim, thank you for that most recent report, really helpful, and for data nerds like us, it's both an incredible wealth of information, and for those of us in data institutions to figure out ways to bring that to communities so that people can use it and turn it into advocacy and action, I think is a really valuable tool. If I had recommendations to make in response to Jan's question, I think, how do we better measure progress towards equity? Something that I'm concerned about is the exposure of people to messages promoting unhealthy food. That we've done measuring of that at the national level, but I haven't seen anything looking at that at the city level, and then setting goals to reduce exposure and looking at the disproportionate exposure in different communities. I also think it would be great to, the reports on Fresh, the supermarket subsidy program, talk about the number of stores built and jobs. That's great, but how many communities have gone from having too few supermarkets to having the right proportion that helps to make healthier food more available? That is what would allow us to look at the population impact. And also making the fitness grams, which are the measurement of a variety of things on school children, is a great tool for tracking our progress at the community level and at the city level, and making those data available to a wider variety of users, and then helping folks in communities, parents, councils, to translate that into action. On jobs, I talked a little about this at our last forum. I'm a big believer in strengthening public sector in food. And I think institutional food is one piece of that. The public markets are a second. I'm very much think we ought to be investigating setting up social enterprise corporations that are able to provide food to institutions, both small and big institutions. Right now, many of our city's largest institutions contract with corporations that are located in other parts of the country or in other countries. We should be bringing those jobs to our area and also creating a market for regionally grown food. And I'm not sure that the market can value those things highly enough. And so creating a different kind of business which has more of a social mission might be able to do that, and could probably create better jobs as well with better working conditions.